Schönen guten Mittag.
Good afternoon to you from the Hessen Regional Representation, Hessen Livestream, a hybrid event. We have two of our panelists here on the in our side, Mr. Andresen and Mrs. Kauffmann, and Mr. Meyer, connected via video, linked to the particular conditions of the corona, well, let's still call it crisis. You've seen up front in the video that we will be talking about what stimuli does the European Recovery Plan offer for sustainable employment and what does the industry need. As indicated, we are talking to Dirk Meyer, Chief Executive Officer, HessenChemie Employers Association since 2016, but a long career on the federal level as well. Rasmus Andresen from the European Parliament. He is responsible for the negotiations concerning the multi-annual financial framework for the Greens with a German-Danish history. I'll leave it at that. In the Hessen context, I will not mention too many northern German influences because we have Mrs. Kauffmann as well, responsible for the finance ministry of Schleswig-Holstein and the Kiel at the Institute of Kiel. So it's in the northern part of Germany. But for quite a while now, working at the Commission for DG ECFIN, now DG Employment, nowadays for several years now. So we have a broad area covered here from the employment side towards the financial framework. So briefly indicated, you can ask questions as usual in German and English on the streamline at lv-brussel.hessen.de or on the phone as well, 32 for Belgium, 472 030181. Before entering into the discussion, I would like to give the floor to Wiesbaden, Mrs. Puttrich, for a brief introductory word. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, warm welcome again to a very particular event. For 10 years, more or less, we've been organizing twice a year with the HessenChemie Employers Federation an expert discussion on social policy. This time it's going to be interesting because Germany has the council presidency, and in the field of social policy we have a lot of things to show. Germany has an economic success because we have the social market economy and because we have a social partnership. And in the last years, this has proven to be an ideal way because it's better to work together than against each other. But in this period of time, things have changed as well. The willingness to be member of a federation or trade unions have reduced, and what will be the way ahead and what's the situation in the European member countries? European member countries are having quite different structures, different experiences and systems. So I'm looking forward to, together with you, to listen to an expert discussion with new insights in this area. Thank you. So we don't have that much time, so we'd like to get into the topic immediately. I wanted to go to Hessen, first of all, to ask a first question to Mr. Meyer at HessenChemie, but we have technical problems. We're always advancing with the positive or negative experience in the digital world. We have problems with the connection to Wiesbaden, so we'll start here locally with our members here, talking about the financial framework and the recovery plan. I have a look at my guest on the right-hand side, Mr. Andresen. What about the negotiations between Parliament and Member States? They have started in July. We've seen an agreement after 4 eventful years at the council level. Where are we now? How close to a solution in order to make sure that the whole package can get started in the early next year? So it's the objective for all of us in the coming weeks to try and find a compromise, allowing us to get started with the program immediately. this is really necessary as well. If you have a look at the period of time that has been going on for quite a while now, and all the effects of the corona crisis as well. But the way to get there is still far away. So we have two negotiating rounds with the European Parliament and with the European Council as well. And things have not really been moving here. I'd even like to say that the Council is expecting that Parliament will simply agree with the complicated result, being obliged to do so, and not pushing them to move away from their initial position. From the European Parliament side, we have another point of view. Research, digitization, or climate, or other areas will have to be renegotiated, but there's not a lot of movement, unfortunately, right now. So if I may ask again, in other words, you see a kind of a Brexit phenomenon in the sense that both sides are simply maintaining their positions. Time is passing by, and everybody hopes that this will put more pressure to the negotiations. No, our negotiations are not that crazy, luckily. Both sides are still maintaining a proactive approach, but member states at the Council in July had really chosen to go at the expense of European programs in their agreement, and between Parliament and Council it's more difficult to find agreement because the member states have been trying to find a common point of view for quite a while, and Parliament cannot say that we are simply here to agree with everything. This was foreseeable, so we will have to spend lots of hours to be in a proactive approach, but it's a better approach than for the Brexit. Well, that's good to know. Before we talk about the essential elements, Mrs. Kauffmann, let me ask you, if you have a look at the compromise that has been reached in July, it's been difficult, so we know it all, but from the Commission point of view, or from the perspective from Director at the DG Employment, what has been reached here, is that exactly what the EU needed right now? Well, first of all, I would say that is certainly an important step here to have been able to have such a major instrument put on track at this very important moment. This shows that the solidarity between the member states is given, and so we don't want to go for small steps, but really big and major steps here, because we're in the biggest crisis ever, and the only thing that can help here is a major push here. So in that sense, the Commission is certainly very satisfied right now. We're satisfied also from the point of view of the Directorate General. From Commission point of view, we can say that we will have subsidies on the one hand and credits on the other. That's a really important point, this mixture. And in the area of social affairs, we have a good coverage as well. So it's about continuous training as well. This is important. On the one hand, we have really efforts to try and push the digitization and accompany the change towards a more sustainable economy, but also fairness and social competence are playing an important role. And what we want to make sure here is that this is really being realized in the plans of the member states, and whether this occupation, employment, social and skills component is strong enough. I don't know what Parliament will be able to do in that sense, and on the other hand, it will be important to see in the future what exactly will be the contents of the national plans, how reforms are integrated here, also in the areas of employment, social affairs and skills. And are you optimistic as well that this will have its repercussions here? If you talk about reform right now, we talk about climate expenses, digitization, getting away from the fundamental question here, indicating that everything that's good for the economy will certainly and necessarily have a positive effect on social affairs. How can the Commission make sure that it will not only solely be green and digital, what will be coming out of it? Well, first of all, in the digital and green topical area, it's important as well how this change will take place. There has been a communication from the Commission side indicating that the Green Deal is not simply the Green Deal, but also a fair or just Green Deal. And from that point of view, it's also important in the different sectors what the significance will be in the fight against the poverty of households when energy prices will be on the increase. How make sure that disadvantaged households will also stay connected to the digital network and so on and so forth. How will the Commission be able to ensure this? One possibility here is that as soon the plans are being presented, the member states will produce them as draft documents in the coming months, together with the draft budgets for the next year, and at the latest from January till April, these plans will then be available, and the Commission will have to evaluate them. There will be another opportunity to see whether topics like the distribution effect have been taken into account. Will there be a sufficient reinforcement of the training and education area? If we say only digitization or only green matters, well, this will be an advantage for the people as well. If it means that in the future their services with town halls will be digitized, when they will have the skills as well to do so, and well, the networks will have been extended. So this will not only be a good element for the companies, for justice in the fiscal area, and for the companies as well. Well, it has to be done in the right way. I'll check with our technical support. Can we connect Mr. Meyer by now? The connection is working again? Excellent, excellent. Well, hello again, Mr. Meyer from Brussels. Towards you in Hessen. So our question here for you as well, if you have a look at the July compromise, is this what from the social point of view Europe really needed? Is the social aspect sufficiently integrated and not only a collateral benefit of the whole package at the end of the day? Well, good day to you from my side. I welcome you and salute you from Wiesbaden to Brussels. I would have loved to be with you. So now we are trying the technical alternative here. I thank the regional representation of Hessen to be able to have this expert discussion organized together concerning social policy. So your question, what is our evaluation of the present state of the matter? Well, we certainly salute what has been found as a construction until now, because we need a very clear and quick answer to the most profound crisis seen after the Second World War, so we're in the middle of it still. So the procedure until now could be summarized as more light and dark. So the possibility to act for Europe has been maintained. So I'm looking forward to fast negotiations with the European Parliament as well, and the next step. So the countries most hardly hit, like Italy or Spain, should be taken into account in a particular way. And from the economic side, for us, it's really important to see that there are control mechanisms as well. This simple formula, more money for Europe to go anywhere, would not have been sufficient. But there are dark sides of it as well, very painful compromises. For instance, the clause the state of law. So it's really important we have a reduction in research and development. The GAP is too strong from our point of view, but for us as pharmaceutical and chemical industry in Hessen and beyond, it's important that we have two scenarios here. So we have the short-term approach to go beyond this crisis, and on the other side we have the future situation in the long run. Green Deal has been mentioned already. We would like to transform this into a sustainable deal. So the economic, ecological and social dimension should be taken into account at the same time. As you have mentioned yourself just a while ago, you said that social advancement will have to go together with economic advancement. So What we have reached in Europe, in the social and economic area, should not be jeopardized. Climate protection, investments, digitization should not only be on the side of demand, but also on the side of implementations, and mentioned quite clearly by the institutions and put into the discussions with the different partners. But quite clearly, you say, just as Mrs. important to have put a very important signal to be wanting to advance quickly. But for the implementation, so it has to be fast, most of all, instead of being detailed and very precise in the social political area. Well, social elements have to be put into practice as well. We have huge repercussions for the health system, social system, employment situation, and the pandemic is not behind us. It's still ongoing. Have the instrument of short-time work as a transitional method to maintain employment for a certain period of time, hoping that afterwards we will reconnect to the performance of the industry and of companies as well. Concerning future questions, it's not only about speed instead of precision, but it's about feasibility as well, and studies concerning the impact. If we have discussions here with the sector, we have to know what are the technical challenges, what are the economic challenges for the future, and what will this mean very precisely, very concretely in an action plan with what technologies, what investments in order to be able to reach the very ambitious objectives and have an economic situation, employment, and a social situation that is still advancement in Europe. So this plan has to be successful. So you have open two possibilities on the left-hand side with the Kauffmann, short-time worker, and but I stay on my right-hand side with this Mr. Andresen first of all and ask again about the speed of the implementation, you called it. It sounds evil, but we have a conflict concerning the objectives we have next year, coming closer and closer. It's supposed to start in January already, and we have two institutions still fighting with each other to see what the basis should be like. Will we not be having a problem very soon that without a divergence always been the first of the three institutions producing ideas and proposals in the last period of time for between. We've been waiting for the council. Sport, but for the reasons I mentioned, we have a problem if that should be the representation. This should be implemented quickly, but the heads of state and government have not development until now would be difficult, and we don't have a clear council, and the German that he has taken us very in the same direction. Agree on a common package, and I'm quite so President could and it will be difficult. 18th of September was the objective for the German Council presidency for an agreement. Do you negotiation rounds, but from my do you think at the end of the day you will be willing to say that the rule of law aspect in Hungary and Poland is more so they want to have a maintain a reality that we get closer again to the 9 billion initially proposed by the Commission, and especially French liberals have a major interest to make sure that progress is realized in their funds, because it was their president as well who made sure that we again about fiscal compensation for CO2 taxes. So we should realize progress here and maintain our course. Mrs. Kauffmann, now I will do something what civil servants in Brussels don't like to do. I will ask what your positioning would be put in another way, but I will not mingle initiations, but add a few other elements. It's not just like the recovery is everything we have. When the crisis started initially in March, the instance allowing member states to have opening for budget and of course could be made without problems. We had a more flexible approach as well for aids, subsidies, and under the ESF we had two packages. It's not that everything is solely connected to the recovery plan. And the last element in this context I'd like to mention is that we've heard already how important Germany and the rest of the EU consider the short-time work plans. I could mention it before again. We are talking about 100 billion of credits to support these short-time work approaches, and they are supported in the different member countries. And we could say that we have an increase by 0.6% until now. And in the United States, there has been a quadrupling to 14%. So we have things that are taking place right now and that are important. Concerning your conflict of objectives here, to be rather social or quick and dirty maybe, well, I have to say that if you have a look at the facility and what is supposed to take place here, well, one thing the members should do in their plans is to have country-specific recommendations of the last 2 years to be evaluated again, what has been mentioned here by the Commission and what should be advanced in different member countries. And this will play a role as well. And if afterwards the Commission puts this to whether the social elements, because about 40% that this will really take place. That the Commission is writing a lot of things in these recommendations, and there's someone having a look at it and putting them aside, or in other words, ignoring. Well, first of all, I'm responsible within the semester as well for the areas employment, social affairs and skills, and it's not quite as negative as you are presenting things. Sometimes we months for since we started with the European semester, for instance, then we can actually see more reform implementations. But you're quite right, we are not fully satisfied yet. So the question here in how far member states with these funds will maybe receive another approach or support for difficult or costly reforms, then it would be easier to have money available and say, okay, we will do this, like have a dual education, really important for a successful role in the labor market, and so we have spent money for that. to see now whether that much is being done in this area as we would wish for, well, then I cannot give you any position here. What is there? And the last point concerning this topic is that we are working on it already. We are working together with the member states. And what from our point of view might be possible here, outside of the country-specific recommendations, and in September we will launch the discussions already, independently now from the legal proposals to see whether there will be a specific decision or not. Already working on it. Point of view concerning the time frame, I'm not too pessimistic.
And what we have seen then a year after, when we have a first balance, we will talk about it. As far as we are talking now about joblessness or the different helps, the different billions are already almost all distributed from the Commission. Yes, that's true. I do not have the last numbers, but anyhow, first of all, do you know which country has a right to do that, to have something? It's more than 90%, and distributed in the sense the money arrived. There we are still talking about 1 or 2 months' time, because there are still things that have been financed in the budget, and the member states receive the money they already spent, and they might also help out where people are jobless, because in Germany we were talking about all this. Mr. Meyer, I would like to talk to you. I see you once again on the screen now, yes? The SURE instrument, which is a reassurance for all this, is understood as if this was financed from Brussels directly. What do you think about this instrument in this crisis? And then it's up to the end of 2020, and this should be then a definite instrument. You have different things in this question, because first of all, if you move money in a situation like now, where we are now, this helps just for bridging, but you can't solve structural questions. Many things that are positive in the markets must be organized in the member states and applied in the member states. And the Commission initiative, do we have the right input or the right instruments? And I'm not quite sure that it's like this right now. I would go even further, because in every crisis you also have the opportunity to look from a different angle, and we ask then, can we continue like this? Should we continue like this? And I guess in social policy we should now define once again who is responsible for what. And we have a political agenda like the social rights, the pillar of social rights, and there we have an action plan from the Commission that should come up, and it seems there might be some new regulations coming with this. And as employees, economy, we have a different approach. We need, because if I talk with our members, we have 300 companies that are in one association. They talk a lot about working conditions. We have a lot of bureaucracy. We have the posting of workers directive, and this is something, this is the right moment to check once again without starting new regulations, neither from the short-term approach like in the next next few weeks or months or 1 or 2 years, nor does this helping on a mid-term. Yes, we do need and have to invest money, but all this has to happen in the member states. We, from the social partners, have to do a good job too during the crisis, but also afterwards. And Mr. Meyer, before we talk about this, do you think that the SURE program is an error? Or would you say it was right in the very moment, but this shouldn't be something that we carry along with? Yes, that's right. It helps in bridging, as I said, but not in Europe and in the different transfers. And as far as the crisis now is concerned, do you think that what we had during the last crisis with Greece, what we did too much, the structural reforms, is now not considered enough? Well, we learned that the countries that had a solid approach to their budget had more possibility to create money also from the state. And if you didn't do your homework in the past, then obviously you have less opportunities when it is necessary, and this is something we should consider. We are in a situation just like it is, and there where people are particularly hit, we should give strong help, because this is also a question of solidarity, and it's also important from the economic point of view. Our market is Europe, and we have all the interest from the economic point of view that Europe gets stronger, that the working place is not, that working places are not lost, but we can't divide one from the other. And I would like to ask about tomorrow and the day after. How can we create the structures in Europe in the different kinds with all here about the reconstruction fund. It's therefore not something that is just once in a lifetime, that happens once in a lifetime. Is this the wrong approach? Are you d'accord with Mr. Meyer, or should we think about it? If COVID shows us one thing, then it is particularly where we have weak points, and as far as the European, we find in many parts that a common market, a European Union without a strong social part can't work. With more money, we have to react with more money for the health structure. And I see there's also for other instruments that have been mentioned, the SURE program, or the principle behind the recovery fund. And if this is our answer, then we can also already work for future crises. To foresee this, so that in the next economic or pandemic crisis, to restart everything from scratch. And I would like that the debate that in Germany since some time, Mr. is working on that this debate should be further discussed, and we are a society that believes ahead and do something important from my point of view, really necessary steps ahead. This leads only to do not need it. They know here about the economics are not proved and are, and I guess that we have the challenges which countries in the European, which is the answer, but we should do this together, and we should also see if we can have a useful reform, structural reform, so with investments, so that other countries see the opportunity during in a crisis, and the problem are structural reforms. That's true, but it's not that he has spent much during the last few years. Receive probably together, and because you arrived when he the government will do everything to reduce the European Social Fund, but it should be let's say enhanced. This is obviously difficult, but the European Parliament is available with more money for these sectors. I might imagine that this July had this flagship program where we have still some movements, and I'm not sure how prepare what became instrument thought for COVID, which is a short-term approach, but the question is now if all the member states get out a can't help them in order to finance these short time work because this was our approach. He is still there, and what I could say now, yes, it's true. You can't these systems forever and run them forever, because if some sectors due to a digital change and help, there must be a moment where you have further training for people to work in other sectors. For I understand what the incentives are, and this is a very situation. Apart from the help that not all countries received or want. For example, Germany didn't need to do that. We also had the factor that some of the countries did. We have seen in the last crisis that a country like Germany that made analysis had less problems during the crisis and lost less. In the moment we prepared and presented the economy, you might intervene. And as far as the transfer is concerned, these are really loans. It's not money that is given at zero. As far as Mr. Meyer is concerned, the social pillar, and this is already 2 years ago, 3 years ago, vision in order to make it better Europe, even if we are better maybe other continents. In a moment where we on the one hand have in the digital green digital green world, all these challenges are there on the other side, and we should therefore continue to be aware that people have fair working conditions, quality, that we have a social solidarity scheme, and obviously the numbers of the regulations, and during the last commission especially, but this see that many exaggerated, but also about the minimum wage that should be introduced 20th of October, and this was an important approach, and in such a context, social partner was done, and the second round started or finished, sorry, at September, and at the beginning of this week, and we work on it, and I think that especially now, this is important to intervene in the competences of the social partners or the member states, and if we have 60% of average payment or not, this is something you will not tell us now. Well, I had to try anyhow. Well, Mr. Meyer, yes, I can see you now, and you are not just clapping your hands over your head, what Mrs. Meyer said, but probably it was not something that leaves you quiet and relaxed. It is like if you have a huge guy and you have a crisis that he will be bent and bent and bent, and then he can't work anymore. It's the EU regulations. I would like to have a bottom-up approach. If we talk about a directive, it gets emotional because they do huge sized say, and you say if there is a quota or not, it is intervening in the autonomy that we do have as far wages are concerned, and therefore this is something I would stress. And we want also fair standards, fair working conditions, especially spontaneous reaction. I understand that a lot as far as but they have a long, and we have seen infra test that a minimum wage is, and we want the union to continue working for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and the populists not allowing to destroy the market. We will also have to discuss this for countries who have a very weak social system, and therefore